Hi, my name is Ashely Fale-Olsen, and I'm presenting on examining the effect of fate within the secret history by Donna Tartt. Within this novel, I'd like to examine the fact that the author uses a idea of fate that is similar and compatible with a Greek tragedy instead of an American one. In Aristotle's Poetics, the philosopher outlines defining characteristics of a Greek tragedy, including the character of the tragic hero. One of the specifications included is the martia, or tragic flaw of the hero. This character flaw is a prevailing theme in the first novel by Donna Tartt, The Secret History. Though Tartt is a contemporary American novelist, the novel takes on the outline of a Greek tragedy, namely in the presence of fate. Within the context of the United States, the idea of fate is often balked at or discarded in exchange for individuality. The American dream would have its consumers lift themselves up by their own means and make a successful life for themselves. This idea drives the capitalist overtones of the culture within America. The Secret History is a semi-autobiographical novel which centers on a group of students studying in a small classics department in New England, which mirrors Tartt's own university career at Bennington College. This overarching theme of Greek tragedy that is compatible with the classics that they're studying is heavily referenced throughout the text, namely in the characterization and presence of fate within the narrator. So while they also reference it within the text, reference different Greek tragedies, they also are the characterization and the fate throughout the text mirror these specifications. The narrator, Richard Papin, exemplifies someone seeking the American dream. The narration occurs in the first person retrospect, which provides the reader with the personal emotions and point of view that drive the tragedy forward. He comes from a town in California where nothing ever happens and raises himself above that status. When he begins relating his narrative, he's attending a community college and seeking a better life. His goal, rather than that of business, money, and the typical pursuits of the American dream, is his pursuit of academia, though he still pursues an upper-class lifestyle. He gets good enough grades to apply to the prestigious Hampton College when his tragedy begins. As he describes this movement, I lit on Hampton by a trick of fate. As you see the quote here. The inevitability of this statement combines both the idea of fate and the essence of the tragedy. Even in retrospect, the narrator does not feel that this decision is within his control. Instead, he uses the description as a trick, which carries a negative connotation, and fate, which is something that the character does not have agency over. Within the first chapter, Richard identifies himself as a tragic hero, revealing his fatal flaw, which drives Grecian tragedies. As Aristotle outlined in his Poetics, the tragic hero is a character that operates without the intention of evil, yet the fatal flaw, or the martia, of this character drives them to their destiny. Chapter 1 opens with, does such a thing as the fatal flaw, that showy dark crack running down the middle of a life, exist outside of literature? I used to think it didn't, now I think it does. And I think that mine is this, a morbid longing for the picturesque at all costs. The evidence of his martia is present in the manner that he wishes to view his compatriots in the murders within the plot, and how he tries to shape their view of him throughout the text. He's the only character that is not of upper class, and he tries to make them view him as still upper class. Out of the group of 6 students and the professor that makes up the core characters, Richard is the sole member who's not raised with money or high status. He conceals the nature of his previous life, letting everyone assume that his life was more picturesque before than it was. While truthfully, Richard comes from a suburb of California in the desert, which he actively despises throughout the book, he lies about his life to his current peers and friends about his life before the events of the book. He says, I gave Henry the spiel. Orange groves, failed movie stars, lamplit cocktail hours by the swimming pool, cigarettes, ennui. He listened, apparently entranced by these fraudulent recollections. The fabrication of his previous existence lends itself to the flaw, which he outlines for the reader. Richard longs for this to be his past, for his life to be romantic and digestible by the crowd of wealthy East Coasters. In reality, he rejects his past because it did not fit into this ideal, which is exactly why he flees from it. The truth of his Californian life he describes in the first chapter. I didn't like home any better. I don't think that I can explain the despair my surroundings inspired in me. He conceals both the truth of his social class and background in order to fit in with the group of the classic students, which are the object of his obsession. They fit into his preconceived romantic perception of life because they have the ease of money and class. Richard's inability to see his friends as murderers is precisely what implicates him as an accessory to the second murder. Especially the leader of the group, Henry, who plots and actually commits both murders, has him wrapped entirely in appearance and romanticism. As Richard says of himself, and the professor of the classics department years ago in an old notebook I wrote. One of Julian's most attractive qualities is his inability to see anything in its true light, and under, in a different ink, maybe one of my most attractive qualities as well. Ironically, he lists it as an attractive quality when the opening of the book sheds it in a negative light. On the same quality. In the common theme of Greek tragedy, as much as the hero pulls away from his fate, the more bound he is to meet it. Within the novel, the professor with whom he shares this quality meets his own fate because of it. When he hears that his students have murdered their peer, he leaves without informing the authorities, wishing to stay above the mire. He projects his ideas of his students in his cohort he protects this group of students that he has created from being negatively viewed by others, as well as caring solely for his own reputation, not the actual livelihoods of these people. In this manner, the professor creates a sort of foil for Richard. The reader learns through his narration that Richard is currently a lonely graduate student still pursuing academia, while Julian, the professor, was enormously wealthy and upper class. He still holds the same quality of romanticism as Richard. This hamartia that plagues Richard's life is exactly the reason that he meets his fate. When the accidental murder of the first person is revealed to him, he sides with the killers, his fellow classic students, wishing still to fit in with them and the life he has romanticized. This desire is the reason that he becomes the accessory to a second murder, that of one of his friends. Now, the murders are the driving plot points of the first half of the book. The second half takes a much slower and convoluted pace. There are fewer events that seem to happen. There's a large scene at the very culmination of the novel. However, the reader is privy to the dissolving mental states of the core characters. The narrative takes place from the point of view of Richard, which gives the reader direct insights to his thoughts and feelings. The other characters do fall into distinct disarray, and the reader is also privy to these because they're so public to the core group of characters, and Richard is aware of them. They fall prey to alcoholism, abuse, and drug abuse, among other things. The murders serve to drive this mental corruption in the second half of the novel, which is actually, I believe, the true focus of the novel is this mental degradation. Richard falls prey to his fated unhappiness because he has chosen this life heavily subsidized by his romantic ideals, which fail him. The fate that Richard meets at the end of the novel is one of loneliness and unhappiness. He is doomed throughout the novel to have this prevailing sense of discontent, as he mentions with his home in the beginning of the novel. The final scene depicts a dream where Henry is speaking to Richard. I have to find that slide. Where Henry is speaking to Richard, so in a dream. Though he killed himself in front of Richard and the rest of his friends, Henry then effectively severed their ties to each other and set them adrift. Richard has this overwhelming and prevailing feeling that is present throughout the novel that Henry is still alive and unchanged. Like he is the same college student that he was friends with. And so he returns to him in the dream like this. In the dream, Henry reveals the truth behind Richard's fate. Are you happy here? I said at last. It's Richard. He considered this for a moment. Not particularly, he said, but you're not very happy where you are either. The sense of unhappiness that Richard is plagued by is his overwhelming fate. His fatal flaw, the need to romanticize everything, has led him disastrously towards this, since he was involved in this plot of murder and is indefinitely then an accomplice in murder. He can't divulge this secret to anyone, yet besides the people that he was implicated in it with. But then this character is then plagued by the weight of this secret and the ostracization of carrying such a secret of murder. And so therefore he is left unhappy and unable to even romanticize that. Thank you.